Am I the a-hole for ruining my own gender reveal party? I am pregnant with a baby due in November. My fiance and I didn't care much about the sex of our child, so we didn't make too much noise about it once we found out. The only people we informed were our parents, their parents, and our siblings. Prior to this, my father's girlfriend of 3 years had been asking me about my plans for a gender reveal party. I've always been clear about not wanting one. When I announced my son's gender to them, she expressed disappointment that I hadn't changed my mind about a party. I don't like gender reveals. Never have, never will. I prefer baby showers, which I think feel more about the actual child. I never tried to hide that opinion either. Days later, my father's girlfriend invited me over for tea at their apartment. My dad was out of town. When I got there, about a dozen people popped out of hiding to surprise me. There were pink and blue decorations everywhere, which made what was going on pretty clear. As I stood there in shock, my father's girlfriend excitedly told me they were throwing me a surprise gender reveal party. Since I had already told her, she had taken it upon herself to order a cake with colorful frosting, decorate the apartment, and invite a bunch of people over. The guests included her mother, who I don't get along with, some of her friends, my mother-in-law, not my mom, and 4 of my friends. As I later found out, my mother-in-law and friends had been told I'd changed my mind about gender reveals. I had not. Still in the doorway, I looked over and said to everybody, "It's a boy. You guys can go home now," and I left without looking back. Hours later, my father called me furious that I had ruined the party. He said his girlfriend had put a lot of effort, money, and love into planning it, and I should have shown respect and gratitude for it. Apparently, she hadn't stopped crying since I left. It's been almost a week and they're both still upset. Even after I explained I never wanted that party in the first place, they're insisting I could have sucked it up for an hour or at least cut the cake. So, am I the a-hole? Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "Not the a-hole. This smacks of her trying to prove that she cares about you more than your mom. Especially seeing as how either your mom wasn't invited or she turned down the invitation to respect your wishes. She doesn't seem to get that the way to prove she cares about you at all is to actually listen to what you want and don't want." I asked my mom and she confirmed she wasn't invited. According to my father's girlfriend, she didn't have her number. That's probably true, but I have no idea how she could have gotten my mother-in-law's. I think the real reason is that she knew my mom wouldn't back her up. Had my mom been invited, she would have told me everything. She knows I wouldn't want a gender reveal. Then user 2 commented and said, "But OP, there was cake. You could have deliberately misunderstood and said, 'Thank you for the baby shower for my boy,' and then stayed for cake. Then you could have also, in between bites of cake, acted all confused to the guests and said, 'I'm so glad she respected my wishes on not having a gender reveal party and threw me a shower like I preferred.' And then you go get another slice of cake. SMH, missed opportunity to have your cake and eat it too." That wouldn't have worked. The moment they all yelled, "Surprise!" she said it was a gender reveal. The decorations also made it obvious. My fiance did get me cake after all of this, so I didn't really miss out on that. Then user 3 commented and said, "Not the a-hole. Is your dad's girlfriend infertile? Does she have kids?" She does not have kids, but I have no idea whether she's infertile or not. Then user 4 commented and said in a downvoted comment, "I mean, I guess I don't blame you, but it sucks for the other people who just showed up for a party that they thought you wanted and got ditched. Your mother-in-law and friends didn't do anything wrong, and they got punished too." I spoke to them afterwards to clear things up. They were all confused and upset on my behalf. I made it clear I understood they had been lied to, and it hadn't been my intention to put them in that position. We all apologized to each other. Then user 5 commented and said in a downvoted comment, "Your actions were a reflection of how you feel about the girlfriend, not at all about spending time with people who love and respect you and are looking forward to your little one's arrival. If she wants a get-together, she can throw a party. She does not need to make that about my child's sex, especially after I told her not to. My friends and mother-in-law did indeed think they'd come for me, and I spoke to them afterwards, but I will not buy that her mother and friends were there because they cared about me. You're not the only one assuming I don't like my father's girlfriend. That is not true, but when I tell someone I don't want something multiple times and they go ahead and do it anyway, I don't have to stick around. And no, this was not about the hormones." Update. 2 weeks later. Thank you all for your replies, especially those who called me the a-hole for having a gender reveal. I'm assuming you didn't read my post, but you still cracked me up. All jokes aside, I've been expected to be a pushover for most of my life, older daughter of divorced parents, so it was good to know I was right to stand my ground on this issue. After reading your comments, I've concluded that the only thing I did wrong was leaving without talking to my friends and mother-in-law. They were lied to and put into an awkward position after I left. I did talk to them the next day and apologized, but I wished I had told them what was going on. A few days ago, my fiance and I invited my father and his girlfriend over. I told them I was extremely upset with them both, but I wanted to sort this out peacefully. But we still ended up fighting. My father agreed with some points I made, but kept insisting that I was ungrateful and owed his girlfriend an apology. She was quiet at first, but started crying about 20 minutes into the fight. My father's girlfriend said she threw the party because she cared about me, and that she'd want one if she was pregnant. She started talking about all the gender reveal videos that she had watched on TikTok, and how happy the parents look in them. She told me she genuinely thought I would love it, and couldn't understand why I had been so rude to her. To my surprise, my fiance was the first to snap at that. He's usually the calm one. He told her to stop calling it my party, since she clearly threw it for herself. I'd expressed countless times that I don't want a gender reveal, and I was well within my rights to leave when she tried to ambush me with one. The fight didn't go on for much longer after that. Near its end, my father asked me why I hadn't at least played along for a little while. I told him I went there to spend an hour with someone that I've been meaning to get to know better, not to spend my entire afternoon entertaining a dozen people, more than half of whom I either didn't know or didn't like, who got together to talk about my child's privates. I didn't mean to upset anyone, but I had to get out. My father didn't argue with that. There were two main pieces of advice from your comments that I decided to follow. The first was tell my father's girlfriend she needed to apologize to my friends and mother-in-law for lying to them. She agreed, and they later confirmed that she did. Secondly, neither of them will be allowed to meet my son at the hospital when he's born. My father had been looking forward to this, so it wasn't an easy decision, but I made it clear it was final. My father called me the next day to apologize for everything, and I forgave him. I don't expect an apology from his girlfriend, but I'm done feeding that fire. My life is stressful enough as it is. My son will be here in November. He already has a name, and we have just started working on his nursery. I truly can't wait to meet him. Now here are some more relevant comments. User 1 said, gender reveals are still a cringe thing, and always will be. Meh, there are dozens of reasons I dislike gender reveals, but I don't think that's one of them. I do agree with it though, but I like plenty of cringe stuff, so that wouldn't be enough for me to dislike something. Then user 2 commented and said, does your dad and his girlfriend have a large age gap? She just revealed that she wants kids. My father and his girlfriend are 16 years apart, I think. And finally, user 3 commented and said, for the sake of your mental health, do not tell anyone the names you have chosen. Oh, we're not saying anything until birth. The only people who know besides us are my best friend, who will be my son's godmother, and her husband. So once we got all the information, I wasn't surprised. We've gotten stories like this before, and the 16-year age gap, which probably leads me to believe that the girlfriend is in a position where she probably isn't going to have kids, either because she's infertile or the dad is like, I don't want kids, I'm old enough. So I feel like she's trying to vicariously live through OP, and that's not working out, because we've seen this happen before, and I kind of assumed that early on, and while we didn't get a direct answer into her reasoning, I'm going to assume this is the case with the age gap and the fact that she can't have kids, whether due to situation or infertility, like I just said. Also, for gender reveal parties, I don't know about y'all, but I don't hate them. I don't get excited over them and go, woo, but it's a fun thing. It's a surprise. Who doesn't like surprises, right? I'm not gonna hate on anybody for going to a gender reveal party. You can dislike them, but I don't want to say they're cringe. They are cringe if they start forest fires. Do you guys remember that? That was ridiculous. But anyway, next story. Story number 2. Am I the a-hole for divorcing my husband because he wants his son in his life? My husband and I have been married for 2 years. About 6 months ago, an aunts called him and told him about their son. After a DNA test, my husband is confirmed as the father. The kid is 5 and we've been together for 4 years, so it's not like he cheated. He agreed to meet his son and they hit it off well. They've been spending a lot of time together, and the mother is happy to let her son connect with his dad. But the problem is, we both agreed to a child-free life. Neither of us wanted kids. He even got a vasectomy and I got my tubes tied. We had a talk about this, and he says it's his responsibility to take care of his kid. And he says that I hope I can support him, but I don't want a stepmom's life. This may be cruel of me, but I can't stand children. My husband knew this about me. I don't dare to force my husband to choose me or his kid, but this isn't the life I agreed to. I haven't told my husband yet, but I'm already talking to a lawyer. I don't know, I don't know what to do here. Then in the comments section, OP received mixed reactions. Then one user commented and said, "Nah, but what did you expect to happen when he found out he had a kid? Were you expecting him to be a deadbeat dad? Let this man go." I don't know what I expected, but I wanted to at least try to acclimate to this, but I can't. Then user 2 commented and said, "Child-free here. Circumstances have changed. Even though he didn't want to be a father, he is one now. If you don't want to be married to a father and be a stepmom, you can either live separately for 13 years or divorce. Just know your husband will not be able to be as available, and his finances and plans will always include his son now. I feel bad for both of you. I wish you the best with whatever you decide." I'm aware. He's been so busy lately that we rarely get time to even talk now. Then user 3 commented and said, "You do what's best for you, but good for your husband for stepping up and acting like a man. Don't forget he will also be paying child support, so you better file soon or it might affect your divorce." If you're talking about alimony or assets, don't worry. We don't own a house, we rent currently. We were gonna buy a house, but this happened. Any other assets would be easily divided, and I make about the same as him. I don't need alimony. And finally, OP elaborated on if she has a relationship with her husband's son and said, "Me and the boy, I guess you can say we get along okay. I feel like he can sense my discomfort with the situation, which I try to ease. I've tried to welcome him into our house, but honestly, he's more excited to hang out with his dad. The baby mother doesn't seem to like me much. She's not outright hostile, but she tends to ignore me and always seems to be on guard around me. She hadn't reached out because she never caught my husband's full name. Until recently, she found him on social media by chance. They haven't gone to court to officially hash out child support terms, but my husband is paying for a lot of the kids' needs right now. Baby mama doesn't seem to be in dire need of money, as I think she comes from a rich family." Update. So, I had a talk with my husband. To clear a few things. 1. My husband wants to spend as much time with his son as possible. He even mentioned wanting half custody and have him live with us. So it's not like he wants to spend a day or two with him. He wants to be as close to a full-time parent as he possibly can. 2. Yes, our vows included being child-free. It wasn't in the wedding speech, but we had several long conversations about kids. This was something we promised each other. So yes, being child-free was a part of our vows. 3. I don't like children and I don't want to have anything to do with raising children. But it's not like I yell at every kid I see. I guess you can say I hate the responsibility of raising a child, as opposed to hating children themselves. 4. Yes, I would stay with my husband if he got into an accident and became disabled. See, I love and adore my husband, and I'm willing to work for him, but only for him. Adding a whole other person to our lives is different. I can't love his kid. I can't be a good stepmom. I love my husband, but I don't love his kid. Now on to the update. He almost blew me off again because he was tired from working and spending time with his son, but I insisted and told him I don't want to live like this. We talked and he said he can't leave his kid, and that is the one thing he can't compromise on. He said he's gonna see him as much as he can, and he said that he needs to prioritize his kid's well-being over anything else, our relationship included. I told him I don't want to live like that. He said he won't budge on this. We both agreed that we should separate for a while. Neither of us straight up mentioned divorce, but I'm pretty sure that's where we're headed. I feel empty and angry and frustrated. I know my husband isn't at fault, and I know the kid isn't at fault, but my life is just changing so much. Then in the comments section, one user said, "I hate to say this, but this isn't a compatible situation. He wants the kid. You don't. Why are you dragging this out? Go ahead and make it a clean break so you can both move on. I'm sorry that it's come to this, but as you said, it's nobody's fault. It's just one of those curveballs that life throws at us. My condolences on the situation you're in, and best wishes with whatever you decide to do." Logically speaking, I know you're right. I guess I'm just trying to rack my brain to see if there's anything at all where me, him, and the kid are all happy. Then OP elaborated on how the child's mother found her husband and said, "She claims she never could find him. They didn't exchange numbers or last names. She only found him by chance thanks to Instagram." And finally, user 2 commented and said, "I can't see a solution for this. You probably need to end it before you both become too bitter about it. End on a note that allows you both to remain friends. Good luck." So, like OP mentioned in her near the end there, she was saying she was thinking of a scenario where maybe it could end with her happy, him happy, and the kid happy. No one asked, is she willing to compromise or like bend at all? Like, yes, I know she's child-free. I'm not saying the husband should push that, but people change their mind. I'm just saying, people are open to things. The hubby said he wanted to be child-free too, and he had the option of just not being in the kid's life, but he decided, hey, I'm gonna be in this kid's life. So nobody asked if OP is interested in changing her mind. I'm just saying, it's a possibility. You think there isn't child-free people out there who changed their mind or an accident happened and then they're like, all right, let me try this out. And then they're like, oh, I can work with this or I can live with this at the least. But if she can't find that compromise, if there isn't a way to make all three of them happy, well, then she probably shouldn't drag this out. But the fact that she's still staying leads me to believe that she's trying to think of something, like she said. So I don't know. She's got options, and it seems like she doesn't want to immediately go to divorce. But anyway, good luck to them. Next story. Story number 3. Am I the a-hole if I buy my house on my own without including my fiance? I, 32M, have been dating my fiance, 29F, for 2 years, and we got engaged 7 months ago. We plan to get married in summer of 2025. Now, I love my fiance, and she is a perfect match for me. We have not combined our finances yet, but plan to as soon as we get married. I make significantly more than her, but she is a surgical resident and will start making similar to what I make in about 2 years. We live together and split the expenses where I pay 90%, which is based on how much we make. Recently, my stock portfolio had been doing great, so I decided to sell a part of my portfolio and I made decent profits. I am worried about reinvesting it in stocks, and we decided to purchase a home since we plan to get married soon and start a family. My fiance was also very excited as we would need a nicer house than our current apartment that we rent. We talked about it, and I offered to purchase the house with the cash I have sitting on the sidelines and not take a mortgage. I feel it would be a good financial decision as the current rates are too high and we could always get a home equity loan in the future. It was all good until I told my fiance that I would purchase the house and she does not need to contribute anything to it, as she is still paying off her student loans. Of course, I would be on the title and would have the sole ownership. My fiance is not okay with this. She says that we will be married and our marital home should have both of us on the title. Her friend told her that I might be protecting my assets by purchasing the home before marriage, thus making it a premarital asset. This has bothered her, and she has mentioned that to me. That was not my intention, and I do want our marriage to be successful. I have told her that I do not need to protect anything since we would both be surgeons, and will both make about the same in a few years. However, I feel it is unfair to put her name on the title as I would be paying for the house, and it is risky to put her name even before we get married. I told her that we can revisit this topic after we get married. As we have started looking for houses, we need to make the decision quickly. I understand her point that she wants to be included in ownership of the house where she would live and where we will grow our family. However, we are looking to spend more than $1 million, and it feels wrong to give her half of my earnings and year before we get married. I need advice on what others have done in this situation and how I can handle this sensitive situation without hurting my fiance's feelings. Now, here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "Not the a-hole, but if I were her, I would demand a prenup to keep my future earnings as a surgeon away from you in the event of a divorce." Now, here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "Not the a-hole, but if I were her, I would demand a prenup to keep my future earnings as a surgeon away from you in the event of a divorce. I would not be willing to split the mortgage payment 50-50 if you get all the appreciation. Are you willing to discuss prenup, or is it I get the house and a share of the surgeon's earnings?" So, to clarify, we are not going to get a mortgage on the house. I would be paying all cash for it because I sold a chunk of my stock portfolio. Secondly, we both will have similar earnings after she starts practicing. We will have very stable finances, and I never thought money is going to be a problem in our relationship. I just wanted opinions from people who were in similar situations and how they tackled it. Then OP elaborated on the housing market in his area and said, "Because the housing market in our area is very competitive, if we see a house we like, we will have to put an offer up immediately. Also, the interest rates come down. The housing prices may go up, and I feel we have an advantage right now because we will be making an all-cash offer." Then user 2 commented and said, "If she is in residency, doesn't it make sense to wait until she is employed to buy a house in terms of commute? I will advise you not to give in to FOMO and rush into a decision. A home is the biggest purchase you will ever make, and the most personal. If your fiance doesn't feel her input on where you live is valued, the resentment could undermine your whole marriage before it even begins." In my mind, I'm looking at the house as an investment. I need a place to park my cash. Our rents are really high right now, so we save on that. Plus, once she finishes residency, we could buy a bigger house that fits both of our commutes and rent this place out. That is how I am looking at the house. I want to buy something for the next few years where I could park my cash instead of high-yield accounts and save on rent. Once she starts practicing, we could buy a better house at a location that works for both of us while renting out this property. Update. I wrote a post on a different subreddit regarding buying a house in the near future. My fiance is not happy that I will be the sole owner on the title. She feels that she should be part owner of her own family home, but I plan to pay in cash and do not want to mix our finances until we are officially married next summer. My post was removed from Am I the A-hole, but I wanted to update you guys since you guys are rock stars and so many of you gave me helpful advice. Thanks for everyone who helped me understand why she would feel more secure if her name would be on the title of her marital house, and what issues may occur in the future. I realized that I was not able to think about the situation from her perspective, and I wish I would be more empathetic of her position. I still did not want to mix our finances until we got married in a year and had to think of a middle ground. We had a long discussion about the issue this weekend, and I realized that I was not able to get my point across on why it was important for us to invest that money in real estate. We sat together and I apologized to her for not communicating more clearly sooner. I told her that it was not fair for me to purchase our family home on my own, and it should be a joint decision, and we should own it jointly. I tried to explain to her why it is more advantageous for us to buy real estate now when the interest rates are higher, and we could pay in cash. She was very receptive to it all. She explained why she would not feel a sense of ownership if she were not on the title of the house. She realizes that I have been the primary earner so far in our relationship, but she would graduate soon and become a surgeon, and we would be able to afford a much bigger house in a few years. I proposed that we hold on to buying our forever family home until we are married and she starts her job. That would help us take both our commutes into account when purchasing the house. However, we should buy an apartment or condo near the city where we both work as an investment with the cash in hand. I would still want to be sole owner on the title, and we can amend the title once we get married. We can stay in this property until then to save on our ever-increasing rent. We could then either sell this property when we purchase our forever home or just use it to generate rental income. Luckily, she agreed and was happy, and I took her feelings into consideration. I felt it was a win-win, since that was my original plan, and I was just not doing a good job explaining it to her. So, we are going to keep looking for a good investment property, and she is happy, since she knows that she will be included when buying our forever home. Thanks again, everyone, for helping me with the issue. All I had to do was call it an investment property and communicate better, and she was understanding of my view. Now, here are some more relevant comments. User 1 said, "That sounds like a great compromise. I'm glad you both came to an agreement and that she felt heard. Always good to communicate better." And finally, User 2 commented and said, "Honestly, your compromise of waiting to buy your shared home and investing on a condo in the meantime sounds like a great idea. Form a relationship in financial perspective. Good luck." Ah, yes, communication and compromise wins the day again. If only more adults and people in positions of power knew that. But as for the story, I really was thinking that OP should probably hold off on buying the house. I see where he's coming from financially speaking, but like that one commenter said, buying a home is the biggest decision you ever make, and if your fiance doesn't feel her input on where you live is valued, that resentment can undermine your whole marriage before it begins, like that user said. And now they have a condo and a compromise, and everything worked out for them, and they resolved it like adults. Yay! Next story. Story number 4. Am I the a-hole for being mad at my parents that they got my older brother a car for his 18th birthday and not on mine, and then causing the whole family to be up in arms about it until they came through? Plus, a new update. Okay, so I know the title sounds like I'm spoiled, but hear me out. My brother 20 got a car for his 18th birthday. Not a new car or anything, it was a 20-year-old Lexus that was in pretty good shape. And he rubbed it in my face for the rest of the time he was in his senior year of high school. Compared with my brother, I got just as good of grades as he does. Better in some cases even. I worked my hardest in the hopes of fairness. I even did some volunteering, cleaning up garbage in my local area. Then, on my 18th birthday, it came and went a few weeks ago. And the only thing I wanted, the only thing I was hoping for, was a car. I wasn't expecting something like a new car or a sporty car, just something reliable like my brother got. The party wasn't anything like my brother's 18th. For his 18th birthday, my mom baked the cake herself. It was a delicious layered chocolate pudding cake. I got a sheet cake from the supermarket. For his, they got a DJ. For mine, it was my dad's old boombox with a couple of mixed CDs. We went through the whole party, and I figured my parents might have just been waiting to spring a surprise gift on me, but that didn't happen. I asked them as things were wrapping up why there was no car when my brother got one, and they said that they felt like he had worked harder for it. I asked them what did he do that I didn't do, because I did all of that and more. My grandma was nearby and heard everything, and she asked them as well, why? Why is that? She ended up lecturing my parents that she was very, very, very disappointed in them for showing favoritism. Then she proceeded to announce to everyone still there that my parents thought it fine to get their firstborn son a car and a DJ, but not their second. And then she even pointed out how much harder my parents tried for my brother's 18th birthday than they had for mine. My uncle was the first one to stand up and say something, then everyone else who hadn't left yet. I ended up just walking away and going to my room to sit and think. I got a few I'm sorry calls from relatives, and my grandparents had convinced me to go out with them for the evening. But when I got back, my parents were pissed and told me that I had shamed them to the whole family. I just walked past them because I didn't want to fight. The next few weeks went by with the silent treatment between us. But then, a few days ago, my parents suddenly surprised me with a white 98 Subaru Legacy that runs great. They practically threw the keys and the title in an envelope at me and said to have fun. I got the car, and they're paying for insurance for the next 6 months like they did for my brother. I know a car isn't really a right, but a privilege. So I feel like I've essentially blackmailed my parents into getting me one. So, am I the a-hole for how this all played out? Edit. I would like to clarify a few things. My parents make pretty good money, and also don't go out of their way to live lavishly by choice. They've always been moderate in everything they buy or do. Though if anything that is stretching their finances, it's my brother's college tuition. He got a partial scholarship, and my parents are paying the rest. I don't, and I never intended to ask for the same treatment on that. I want to work and pay my own student loans. Now that I have the car, I'm already looking into getting a part-time job. This also isn't a gender thing, as I am male like my brother. The bill of sale for the car I got says my parents paid $1,600 for it. My brother's car cost them about $3,000 plus, if I remember. But I don't see it as a money issue. I actually really love the Subaru, and told my parents so. They did not share my enthusiasm. I also did try to talk about a car with my parents a few times last year, but they always dodged the conversation about the topic. I figured if I talked too much about it, it would ruin it, and so I stopped. I would have felt like a brat to keep talking about getting an imaginary car, so I just learned to stay silent and hope. Also, I can't go stay with my grandparents because they live in a one-bedroom condo. There isn't enough room for other people. After all their kids grew up, my grandparents decided to downsize to make their eventual retirement easier. Also, my grandparents know of all the details already, and they tell me that I didn't do anything wrong, and were already planning on confronting my parents quietly over the car issue, but they took the chance to take care of the matter when they heard me asking my parents about it. Also, as for my brother's 18th birthday party, it was held in 2020, basically during the height of the pandemic. Honestly, we shouldn't have had a big party like that at the time, but my parents insisted. As for my brother himself, he barely speaks to me, even before he left for college. He didn't show up for my 18th birthday party, and I figured that's just because he's busy with college and he's not even in the same state as us anymore. Honestly, I haven't seen or heard from him since Christmas, and even then the most I got out of him was a mild greeting. I did thank my parents for the car though. Enthusiastically I did, but they've barely said a word to me after giving me the Subaru. And when I thanked my parents, they brushed me off and just went inside. It kind of gave off the vibe that they were letting a brat play with his new toy, which was pretty upsetting, and one of the reasons why I made this post. Edit number 2. There was one more thing I forgot to say. I was really hoping to get the car because I literally couldn't get a part-time job without one. We don't live in the city, and we're 10 miles from the nearest public bus stop. I've always had to get rides to go anywhere. Now that I have the Subaru, I intend to look for a part-time after-school job as soon as I can. Edit number 3. Since it came up in so many messages, I want to clarify that I went to talk to my parents after the party. It wasn't in front of the rest of the family. I intentionally spoke with them in another room and was supposed to be out of earshot of everyone else there. But my grandma eavesdropped and then barged in to start lecturing my parents about their actions, and that's what caused the crap storm to start. Update. 5 months later. Since I couldn't update an Am I the A-hole, I came here to do it. This is my original post, and I've not logged onto this account in roughly 5 months now. So I can now tell you all the rest of what happened before college starts. But before that, there's some things I want to get out of the way from previous commenters and messages. I literally needed a car because there was no way for me to get a job without one. I had no personal transportation and live over 10 miles away from the nearest bus stop. So for those who kept telling me to give the car back back because they think I was either too spoiled and to accept that life is unfair, or that I shouldn't take handouts, or I shouldn't accept gifts from crappy parents, etc., please just stop. My inbox was so crammed full when I logged back on that it took some time to get through it all. It doesn't really matter anyway, though. I did get a part-time job that later went to full-time for the summer after I graduated. But 3 weeks into working part-time, the Subaru blew the head gasket while on the highway at like 45 miles an hour. The temp gauge redlined and I had to pull over and call for help. My grandparents took a look at the car and found that someone had ran a lot of gasket sealer in it, and it was still in the coolant. The car was basically band-aided back together before my parents bought it, and was then barely hanging on by a thread. It drove great, and I was never pushing the car hard as I'm kind of a slow driver. My parents claimed no prior knowledge of the problem, but their only real reaction was to shrug and say it was karma for making them get me the car in the first place. Well, that was a mistake, because my grandparents were right there to witness it, and they tore into my parents like none other. My grandma told me to go wait in my room and let them sort this out. It was 2 hours before I was called back into the living room, and my parents were on the couch and both looked like they had been metaphorically hit by a truck. My uncle and 2 other relatives were there now too. My grandparents had gotten it out of them that when they bought the car, they just looked for the cheapest thing they could find close in the area that still ran, and bought it no questions asked. They didn't even bother to inspect the car, let alone properly read the ad for it. My uncle, who knows a thing or two about cars, told me that the engine would basically need to be rebuilt because the head gasket warped the block, and it would cost more than the car is worth to fix it. I had to call into work and tell them I was unable to make it in because my car was dead. They understood and basically put me on a sort of unpaid leave for the moment. Now, I want to point out that what happens next I had no involvement with. My grandparents told me to just chill for a while and let them and my parents take care of this. And they did. A few days later, they came back with a 1999 Honda Civic hatchback with 180,000 miles on it. It was white like my Subaru was and drives great. It's not all-wheel drive like the Subaru was, but it's great on the road and gets better gas mileage. There was also a list of all recent repairs done to the car, things like a new radiator and stuff. My uncle also looked over the car before giving it the okay. I thanked everyone profusely. My parents, though, had all the elation of Ben Stein on Valium. They said very little and just walked away. There wasn't even the vibe that they had last time of acting like they were giving a new toy to a brat. If I could put it to words, the way they acted was just pure defeat. The Subaru got resold later for $400, since that was the best we could get for it with the blown head gasket, and that money was put into my savings. Now, that's only one half of what happened, though. You see, when I said I did better in high school than my brother, I wasn't kidding. My brother got a 30% scholarship after he finished high school. Well, I got a 50% one. Not at the same college, of course, but at one comparably good that was also closer. To say my parents were shocked is an understatement. Of course, they just both looked unhappy as soon as the shock wore off, and I decided it wouldn't be a good idea to poke the bear by asking them about it. But my grandma thought otherwise and poked that bear, and I mean really poked it. First, she asked if my parents were happy for me, and they claimed they were, but really didn't show it in their attitude. So my grandparents finally asked what their problem was. Why do they dislike me? Their second son was doing great and even went above expectations, and they can't be happy about it? Did they want me to fail? Were they hoping I would fail? What is the deal? My mother looked really upset, and my father couldn't look me in the eyes. They both meekly said they were happy for me, and managed to say that they want me to take the world by storm when I go to college, and even said they'll help pay some of my tuition as well, just like they did for my brother. My grandparents both sharply said that they better keep their word because there should never have been any favoritism, period. I thanked my parents for their help, got a light if not limp handshake from my father, and a very stiff hug from my mother. It all felt so forced. I was and still am extremely thankful for the car and the tuition, but my parents just drained the room of all emotion. I ended up asking if my grandparents knew what it was that made my parents act this way. I asked if I was an accidental pregnancy or something, and they gave me the "it's time we told you" look. Well, I'm not adopted like so many asked, but I was unplanned. Sort of. You see, my parents wanted both a girl and a boy, but got 2 boys instead. My brother came out as a boy, so my parents were really hoping to get a girl on the next go. And they both had a prior agreement to stop after 2 kids. They never got a girl. My grandma told me they refused to find out my gender until after I was born. They were convinced I would be born female. And they had bought a lot of baby stuff for a girl, and they didn't get a girl. My grandma said I ended up using all of my brother's hand-me-downs till I was 3 years old because my parents had bought so much girl stuff in advance that they couldn't use. So I was just a disappointment to them from the time I was born. My grandparents said that they know my parents are screwed up, but they've been the way they are for so long now that there's no point in expecting them to change. Since then, my parents hadn't spoken to me much about college. In fact, they ignore the subject as much as they can, and thanks to some of the warnings I got from people who messaged me making me paranoid, I called the college I've been accepted to and made sure to tell them that if anyone calls or emails pretending to be me, or my parents call trying to say I'm not coming, then to call me for a double or even triple check if anything like that happens. I mean, I kind of doubt my parents would do that sort of thing, especially after everything that's happened, but I felt like playing it safe was the better option. Though, there was something that I really didn't expect to happen, and that was my brother calling me. He called me out of the blue to talk. He said our grandparents called and told him everything. He told me he was sorry for what happened in his own way, and he hopes that once I'm on my own, I won't need to ever come back. He actually admitted to me that when he finishes college, he's going to stay in the state he's in because he likes it there. Our parents, I do know, actually really want him to come back when he gets his degree, but it looks like that's not happening. I said I don't blame him, and I may do the same. The rest of the conversation was a bit awkward because we aren't really used to speaking to each other much anymore. My grandparents and the rest of the family held a surprise party for me over the weekend, and they made it almost like a repeat of my brother's 18th birthday. There was a DJ and a big chocolate cake that my grandma made. I couldn't thank them all enough. My parents attended the party, but they were like wallflowers the entire time. They didn't say or do much. Just stayed sitting at a far table in the corner and drank beer quietly. The look of defeat they had was even greater now. I think the party wasn't just to congratulate me, but also to rub in my parents' faces that they should have done better. Because the rest of the family have made their disappointment in them clear. They seemed like they wanted to leave the party for a while. Can't say I blame them. They were being humiliated into staying where they were, and my grandma said that you're never too old to be taught a lesson in humility. As for my personal life, my part-time job went to full-time after high school, and I've been working hard to build my savings before I leave for college. I made minimum wage, but a job is a job, and I want to leave it with my best effort put in before my 2 weeks' notice are up. I doubt I'm going to be coming back here to make another update, and after my first post, I'm just so tired of all the negative comments. About 95% of the comments on my original post were positive, and I want to thank all of those who had nice things to say. You people rock. But the negative comments were so bad that I found it to be mentally draining. Some of the people who commented such negativity honestly feel like they've got worse issues than me. Lots of projecting, maybe. If anyone had something harsh but constructive to say, that was fine. But some people just raged at me like they were foaming at the mouth. I really don't want any more of that. New update. 2 years later. I've been away for 2 years, and I kinda expected I would be back to post one last time in 2024 because my brother went back for a 4-year bachelor's degree, much like I currently am. For those who remember my previous posts, I'm the guy whose parents basically got their butts verbally handed to them by the family for bad favoritism towards my older brother. Crap really hit the fan on my 18th birthday because my parents barely put any effort into it and went all out on my brother's 18th birthday in 2020 during the pandemic. They even managed to get a DJ for the party, and then they presented him with a car. Well, on my 18th, I got no car or even anything close to a similar party, even though my academic standing was better than my brother's. I basically worked too hard for my parents' approval and never got it. When I asked them why my brother got a car and not me, they claimed my brother worked harder for it, which was later confirmed to not be true when I got a bigger scholarship. My grandma happened to be eavesdropping and laid into my parents. Then she got the rest of the family involved, and for the record, they were planning on getting involved anyway. My grandma just stepped things up right then and there. But after several family members laid into them, my parents tried to save face, and they bought me a new car, but they treated me like a brat who was getting a new toy when they gave me the keys. It was a late 90s Subaru that I thought was great, but turned out to have a blown head gasket that had barely been held together with sealer. My parents treated me like I was a brat for wanting equal treatment. And then when the car went bad, their reaction was to apathetically shrug and call it karma, which caused my grandparents to start it all over again with them and caused a family intervention. I got many people messaging me and asking me if having a car was really necessary and that I basically forced my parents into it. I forced nothing, and it would have happened anyway if I didn't ask my parents why, and I really did need the car. I had no way of having a job without one. My parents lived 10 miles from the nearest bus stop. I literally had no way of making money before college without a car. And no, I couldn't get rides.
No one was available for that on a daily basis. So many people I talked to on here tried to dance around my reasoning to inset their own logic, many of which I felt like were projecting their own problems onto me, and then there was straight up the trolls and the jerks. I don't even want to repeat, let alone remember what they all said to me, but a lot of them kept it up after I got the not the a-hole verdict, like they had an axe to grind, and it really didn't help my mental state at the time.
As you can imagine, my family laid into my parents all over again in that family intervention, and by the time they were done, they looked like scolded kids sitting there looking at their feet. The Subaru was sold as junk, and my grandparents essentially forced my parents to buy me a better car, a Honda Civic, and my uncle went over the car with a fine-toothed comb before they bought it. And that time, my parents didn't even treat me like a brat. And yes, I still have the Honda, and yes, it still runs just fine. I've kept up with oil changes and the like, no accidents either, I've been a careful driver. And the final thing that broke my parents before I left was finding out that I got a better scholarship than my brother. Any excuses they'd previously had to favor my brother so completely were thrown out the window. And they were forced to give me words of encouragement I knew they didn't mean. And in wondering why they disliked me so much, I later found out from my grandma why I was treated differently. It was because my parents had wanted their second child to be a girl. My grandma ended up admitting even more to me later after I left for college. Before I was born, my parents were so convinced that I would be a girl that they bought a bunch of girl stuff without even checking my gender through the ultrasound. Well, I found out from my grandma about a year ago that my mother had tried to raise me like a girl for the first 6 months of my life. She was putting me in girls' clothes and calling me by a different name. My father enabled all of it. I know it's true because my grandma showed me old family photos of me with my brother when I was an infant, and I was wearing pink in all of them. There was even a visible name tag on some of them that my parents wanted for a girl. But once word got out, my parents stopped dressing me as a girl. My grandparents told my mother that trying to raise me as something I wasn't even giving me a chance on whether or not I wanted to be that. And though my family is rather old school, but my grandparents are surprisingly open-minded people, and they put the hammer down on my parents. So the girl treatment stopped. But instead of new clothes, they gave me my brother's hand-me-downs for years, till my grandparents noticed that too and did something about it. Finding out all of this, my grandparents kept my childhood from being far worse than it was, and they never told me until this past couple of years, and I am incredibly thankful for them. My mother apparently struggled to call me by my real name for 2 years or so, and because my parents didn't get a girl, they refused to connect with me like they did with my brother, the boy they actually wanted. And when my grandparents heard I wasn't getting anything new like my brother was, they threatened them to petition for guardianship of me, and they had evidence of the various things I described too. My parents couldn't stand for anything that could become a public scandal, so they stopped with the hand-me-downs and pretended to love me for a while. But as I got older, it degenerated into indifference, and then maybe into hate. I'm not sure. Hate means to still care in some way, but indifference is the actual opposite of love. I just know my parents couldn't accept that their favorite son wasn't the best at everything compared to their unwanted son. And since I moved out, they've barely interacted with family. They threw themselves into work, in part because the rest of the family forced them to contribute to my college like they did my brothers, but also because to them, work was the only thing that gave them a reason to tell everybody to leave them alone. My grandma suspects they even slept in their cars a few times to avoid coming home. I only saw my parents at Christmas at my uncle's house for the past couple of years, and they barely even spoke to me. Now that I was living my best life away from them, I guess you could say they stopped bothering to act like I was their son. They don't want me anymore after that family humiliation that they feel like they suffered, even though they know they brought it on themselves. And they've basically become workaholics that do little else. My grandmother told me my bedroom is basically exactly how I left it on the day I moved out. My parents have not even gone inside, but they kept my brother's room clean and ready for the day he'd finally come back home after college. Well, that didn't happen. They flew out to see him for his graduation and had a big celebration with him. I was not invited to go as well, not that I could afford it, but my grandparents went along and they gave me the details. My parents were still convinced my brother would be coming back home, and that's when he awkwardly told them he had already secured a job through an internship that he'd done the past year, and he'd found an apartment of his own too. My father became furious, and my mother lost her mind crying and begging him to come home, but he refused. You see, this past 2 years, my brother and I have reconnected a bit. He found my Reddit account and called me. He wasn't angry, but just wanted to talk. He admitted to me that our parents put him through a lot as well. Our mother absolutely smothered him, especially when I wasn't around. And our father was also quite strict with his expectations. So the fact that I did better than my brother when our parents had invested everything into him just broke them. And now they're extra broken because my brother refused to come home with them. The way our parents treated my brother is also the reason why we stopped connecting as siblings until the past couple of years. He did bully me at times when we were growing up, but that's because being the favorite went to his head. But it was favoritism with strings attached, and when he realized that, he got counseling after moving out. My brother also has a girlfriend he met while in college, and he kept her a secret because he knew our parents wouldn't approve, and they didn't when they found out. Bro blew up at them when my mother referred to his girlfriend as the S word, and Bro's girlfriend is in nursing school and a year from graduation herself, and my brother says she's the best. I've never met her, but she sounds wonderful by the way he describes her. My grandma also told me that my mother went so far as to hire a private investigator to find out who my brother's girlfriend was, and was irritated to know that she was squeaky clean and from a good family on the same side politically too. But in her mind, she was the reason my brother wasn't coming back, even though Bro made it clear he decided that before even meeting his girlfriend. My father had basically become stoically silent about it from what I heard, but my mother let it slip to my brother that she hired a detective, and my brother gave our parents a piece of his mind, and this led to a whole argument about how they gave him everything, and he was ungrateful for not coming back. But he called them out that being the favored child is abuse too, because they nearly made him like them, and it broke my parents to hear that. My brother told our grandparents and they staged another family intervention, one I was even involved in through video call. My parents even tried not to pay attention to me, but even Bro told them to talk to me, and we all told them enough was enough. They have 2 sons and they needed to start treating us fairly, because they let something as idiotic as not being born the gender they wanted to ruin their love for me from day one. And pardon my language on this next part, but my father hit his breaking point and yelled, "You want us to admit we effed up? Well, yeah, we did. What do you want us to effing do? Time effing travel? We're paying for OP's effing college too. What more does he effing want from us?" And things ended very poorly in that intervention. My mother cried that she was sorry to me, but even then I still didn't feel her heart was in it because she didn't spend much time apologizing to me at all before moving on to my brother through the phone call. And she spent a long time crying and apologizing to him until he told her to go back and actually apologize to me like she meant it. And that's when my father grabbed the phone and shut it off. Then he just sat down and told everyone to leave. The last thing my grandparents said to my parents was that they were so disappointed in them and that maybe losing both sons showed them that they should have never favored one. Right now, my parents are not on speaking terms with the rest of the family. My grandma heard a rumor they may be planning to move, but they have a paid-off country house and great careers. I feel like they'd be fools to move, but since my brother isn't going back and I'm likely not either, I suppose it's not really an issue. I kinda doubt they'd welcome me in if I came home to visit after the crap that went down anyway, but I'm still thankful to them for helping to pay for my college. My student loans were significantly reduced thanks to them, but as parents, I think we can all agree they just didn't do a good job. I have to say, this is one of the times, though, where the golden child, OP's brother, was like, yeah, this is abuse, too. Favoritism is abuse. It's putting me on a pedestal with strings attached, or however he put it. And I've never seen that mentioned before in a story. Maybe we have once or twice. But I'm glad that OP and his brother are now connecting. And, it's not OP's fault that he went through all of that. And it's not the brother's fault that he went through all of that. Like, yeah, he teased him a little, but he let it get to his head. But then he said that striking line, "You guys almost made me turn into you." That's a huge insult. -1,000 damage. How do you recover from that? You don't. As for OP, what is he to do? The second he came out, the parents cut the cord, looked at him and said, "Oh, is that a penis? Well, that doesn't work for me, brother." And then it all went downhill from there. There's nothing you can do except limit your contact or go no contact. They're thankfully paying for college only because their arms are twisted. So, I don't know, like OP said, he's living his best life now, away from his family. Surprise, surprise. Next story. Story number 5. How do I, 32F, protect my work relationships from a bad nepotism hire? Details. I work for a small company with 11 employees, soon to be 16. I like my job and most everyone I work with, bar one member of the senior team, I'll call him Gavin 40M. Gavin isn't at the top of the food chain, but he has a lot of clout as the CEO really likes him and handpicked him to join the company based on their past relationship. Most of the people at my company have worked with each other before in past roles or know each other personally. Hiring friends is the norm, though I'm one of the few outsiders. This hasn't been an issue at all up until recently, when Gavin hired his wife, Donna, F39, to work part-time at the company and asked her to work on some of my projects without consulting me first. I only found out she was going to share projects with me on the day she started. Unfortunately, Donna is not experienced nor naturally talented in the work she's been assigned. She's been insecure, needy, and anxious from day one, and lacks the basic skills necessary to do her job well. I've tried to help her adjust because I would actually welcome some help with my workload, but she pulls me into meetings for an hour or two every time she's in the office, asking me really basic questions and or just quietly panicking at me. She also does this with the CEO, who she knows personally through Gavin. I've tried to pull away a little by not responding instantly to her Slack messages and not accepting every meeting she's tried to book with me. The result has been that she's started interrupting me in meetings, asking basic but usually inappropriate questions addressed to me. I don't think she's intentionally undermining me because she's always grateful when I help her, but I'm finding it hard to stay patient. Gavin, of course, always chimes in to support her in team settings. I've also tried to build my one-on-one relationship with Donna so there's enough trust to establish boundaries, but unfortunately, I can't really find much common ground with her. She's quite negative, complaining loudly that no one at the company has their crap together, and I feel like she probably says the same things about me to her husband and the CEO outside the office. There are very subtle signs that the CEO may be starting to realize hiring her wasn't a great idea. If she wasn't Gavin's wife, I think she'd definitely be on her way out. So I think my best strategy here is to wait this out and try to stay calm. However, the CEO booked a one-on-one with me next week, and if he asks me about Donna, I'm not sure what I will say. I feel the resentment growing, not just at Gavin and Donna, but also at the CEO for not establishing a fair work environment. I don't want to ruin my place in the company over this. My question is, how do I handle Donna while covering my own ass? And what should I say if asked about what I think of Donna's work? Edit. Whoa, this blew up. Thanks for all your comments and advice. I just read everything and I want to clarify a few things. 1. Donna is not my direct report. We don't have managers at our company, so technically no one is. I wasn't asked to train her, but when I found out on her first day that she's been told to support some of my projects, I sort of had to step in. 2. I don't know if the CEO is going to talk about Donna in our meeting, but I don't like being caught off guard, so I'm thinking more what if. 3. She doesn't have a JD or even a title, so I understand her anxiety to some extent as our environment is pretty chaotic. Given her personal connections, I told her she could probably just define her own role and give herself any title she wants, but she hasn't done it. 4. I don't ignore her messages, I've just stopped responding immediately because it F's up my focus. 5. I'm not the only person she's doing this to. She naturally also books Gavin into long meetings and also the CEO. She's the only one who gets this level of attention from the senior team in the company, and it's not really sustainable in any case. And 6. The work I've tried to help her do is still substandard, which is mainly what's worrying me, and she doesn't really have the right mindset for this type of business that I've seen. She might get away with it as just an average employee in a big company, but in this setting, it is glaringly obvious. She's made references a few times that she's been near quitting from stress, so I really don't want to get any more involved in this unless I have to. I don't want to get her fired, but her flailing around, taking up my time, is indeed disruptive to my ability to get things done, especially right now because I have additional project work on top of my daily responsibilities. I would just talk to her, but I'm afraid she'll take it the wrong way because she's so wound up. And I already have a not great relationship with her husband, so I don't want any of that backsplash. I think my best case scenario is that the CEO takes over her coaching completely if he wants her to stay. I don't feel like I can really ask for that directly, but maybe I could angle for it. Then in the comment section, OP replied to one user and said, "This is the comment that I think has resonated the most with me so far. I'm sure at this point Donna realizes this is not a good situation. In fact, she realized it almost before she even started the job based based on her behavior. In the past, Gavin has behaved in ways that show a lack of self-awareness, so I'm not sure to what extent he feels accountable for this situation. It wouldn't surprise me if he was worried way more about her panicking than her actual performance. However, it's at the level where she sometimes asks the CTO or me how to use her computer because it's a make she's never used before, rather than just Googling it herself. She's entitled for sure. We actually had an outsider in the company with a similar but not quite as bad work ethic / level of experience as Donna, who was fired for incompetence after about 6 months, and Gavin was the one leading the call for her head, so to speak. He's also called me out publicly on occasions where he's thought that I've been wrong about stuff, and only the CEO has ever stood up for me, so it's hard not to feel resentment towards him as this all unfolds. Still, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, and it is relatively still early days. I think in this case, Gavin will try to avoid getting involved in any hiring / firing decision about Donna, but I don't think he'll behave with more humility either. As for the CEO, I agree he probably just doesn't know what to do yet, but he has taken the lead on difficult decisions in the past. I know he values my work, and I think he's actually a good leader most of the time. Your advice is sound, and I'd like to support him, but if he doesn't approach me first, I still think I'm going to keep quiet unless things get really, really bad. If we do end up discussing things, I'll try to be pragmatic as you scripted. I still like the company and want to work here, but how this unfolds will influence whether I decide to stay or not. And honestly, if I take the fallout for some reason, I won't feel bad about leaving / being fired. Donna's performance at the very least should help the senior team realize my job isn't easy and they can't just hire someone off the street to do it. Update: 15 days later. Since my story got way more interest than I anticipated, I thought I would give an update. The CEO didn't want to talk to me about Donna, and I didn't bring it up in the meeting a few weeks ago. However, everything kind of came to a head last week when Gavin started telling other people in the team that a few of us, including me, were making his wife feel awkward. I think some of the original commenters predicted this would happen, albeit in a slightly different way. He didn't tell me directly, and I found out from the other people who had been accused. I then decided to talk to the CEO about Gavin. I didn't mention Donna or her work quality, but I wanted his advice and input on whether I was making anyone uncomfortable. I also gave my side of the story, focusing on how the accusation dampened my morale and pointing out that I feel like the outsider sometimes, since most people in the company are old friends. Fortunately for me, he didn't see things the same way Gavin did and said he would speak to him. After the meeting, the CEO quietly took Donna off my projects and reassigned her something small and not really connected to the core business objectives to work on. He's also now interviewing someone from outside the friends and family circle to take on the lion's share of what Donna was originally supposed to do. Gavin has also been told to provide more direct support for Donna, which he seems annoyed about but obviously isn't going to fight. Fellow viewers, you can't see it, but I'm hitting the nay-nay in my recording booth, and I'm hitting the nay-nay on Gavin L. Pardon me, allow me to be more professional. Major L. And what's Gavin to do? Send an email to himself saying, "Hey, you're making my wife uncomfortable." No, you can't do anything except deal with your own Nepo hire. Huh. What do you mean I got my wife hired and I have to work with her? No. Ugh. Good for OP, and I think the CEO now realizes hiring Donna was not a good choice. They shouldn't just stick to the circle of friends and family, and that OP's job is a lot harder than everybody probably thought. So OP wins for the most part. Gavin has to deal with his own consequences, and the CEO, I don't really know what's he doing. But anyway, next story. Story number 6. Am I the a-hole for not telling my boyfriend about my birth name? I, 25F, and my boyfriend, 27M, have been together for a few months now. I noticed he started acting distant a few weeks ago, but I tried not to get too worried about it because everyone has off days, and he'd been very stressed at work for a while now. Yesterday, when I was over at his apartment, I asked him if he was alright or if I had done something wrong, and he was reluctant to tell me, but I continued to reassure him and let him know we needed to communicate to fix our problems. He then told me he'd been talking to one of my friends and found out I'm not who I claim to be, and I asked him to elaborate because I was genuinely confused about what he meant, and he told me my friend had told him my birth name, which I changed when I was 22 because I really did not like that name. I was adopted as a child from foster care after my biological parents were deemed unfit to raise me. I changed my birth name because it reminded me of my old family. It wasn't anything massive, both my old and new names are still feminine and what I find to be respectable. My boyfriend seemed genuinely upset I didn't tell him about my old name and called me a liar and cursed me out for deceiving him. I honestly thought it wasn't a big deal because I never go by that name anyways, and I feel like he's blowing it out of proportion. He's not been speaking to me after this incident happened, and a lot of my friends are siding with him. I would like some other opinions on this. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, OP, look at all these red flag emojis I'm using. That's a lot of red flag emojis. Not the a-hole, not at all, not even close. Then user 2 commented and said, 27 years old and he responds to something minor like this? That has zero effect on him with swearing and radio silence? Good lord, why are so many of these men so absolutely incredibly fragile and totally incapable of regulating their emotions, especially anger? OP, run at a faster than average pace. Then user 3 commented and said, not the a-hole. I was adopted and changed my name as well. I don't consider the initial name I was given as mine, but the one I chose, legally. My wife didn't find out about this until several years into our marriage. She was interested and understanding, and we haven't talked about it since. Your boyfriend appears to need to mature a bit. And finally, user 4 commented and said, there is something disgustingly wrong with him, and hopefully he will be an ex soon. Acting like this after only a few months? Do you really want that sort of life where you're accused of something every week? There is absolutely no rational reason for him to act this way. Plenty of adopted people change their names when it's finalized. It's not deceitful or even makes you a liar. Update. I posted the first part to this a few days ago, and I've been looking at the comments and taking the opinions in. I've since spoken to my friend who claims she did not tell my boyfriend about my birth name. I found that quite strange, but she promises me that my boyfriend was the one who brought it up in casual conversation, and she said it wasn't like he was asking her, more like he wanted her to agree with him. I tried to ask her why they were talking in the first place, and she made up an excuse about having to go. I suspect something else might be going on there, but moving on, that's not the point of this post. My boyfriend came over to my apartment yesterday since he's decided to speak to me again, and he seemed to be over it, and I thought everything was good until he goes to say something to me and purposefully uses my birth name and then my current name. For the purpose of this post, let's just say that my birth name was Kate and my current name is Sam. So he went, hey Kate, Sam, pass me the salt. And I felt very betrayed by that, and I knew he was doing it just to be a female dog because he had never once known or called me by that name. I asked him to stop as politely as I could, to which he repeated, what was that, Kate? I mean Sam? And I blew up on him about it, and I told him, if you couldn't get my effing name right, then you need to get out of my house. He told me to learn to take a joke, and then he called me an immature R-word, and then he left. I'm writing this right before I call to break up with him because I can't handle him doing this all the time. And at this point, I'm so fed up and I'm just done. I feel like it obviously sounds worse in writing than in real life, but either way, I don't think I can stay with him. Now, here are some more relevant comments. User 1 said, 1. He cussed you out. That would alone be it for me. 2. Gave you the silent treatment like a child. 3. Purposefully called you the wrong name repeatedly, also like a child. Girl, life is just too damn short. Then user 2 replied and said, 4. Calls her names. 5. Mocks people with developmental disabilities. Then user 3 commented and said, what the hell? If you legally changed your name, then that's your name. He has issues and there's something deeper going on. Like maybe he wants you to leave him so he can be a victim and you're the bad guy. Then user 4 replied and said, or he's effing the hopefully ex-friend. Then user 5 commented and said, not the a-hole. That's not a joke. That's harassment. Never stay with someone who neither respects your preferences nor your boundaries. He's not funny. It's not meant to be funny. It's meant to punish you for withholding information he had no need to know. Dating is for vetting. This guy failed. I'm not sure your friend is a friend either. Honestly, I don't think you realize how really bad his behaviors are. You need not to downplay your reaction. And finally, user 6 commented and said, not the a-hole. However, if you continue to stay with him and allow him to manipulate you and continue to mentally and emotionally abuse you, then you will be the a-hole. When my wife and I first met, she introduced herself to me by a name different from her birth name. Later on, I found out what her birth name actually was. I asked her why she goes by a different name, and she told me the reason and that she had legally changed her name to what she introduced herself to me as. Her mother even tried to correct me one time when she heard me addressing her daughter, my girlfriend at the time, by the name that she asked me to call her by. I, in turn, corrected her mother and told her that her daughter wishes to be addressed by the name of her choosing, as she was an adult and it was her choice on how she wished to be addressed by. Especially since she went through the effort of having it legally changed. My wife had overheard the conversation and asked why did I stand up for her like that. I simply told her, because I respect you. And to this day, I continued to address her by the name that she chose. The key factor is respect. He obviously does not respect you. It is not his choice as to what he feels your name should be. That is your choice. If he truly loved, cared for, and respected you, then it wouldn't matter what name you chose to even be called by. With all that said, by virtue of your friend's betrayal, just dump both of them and free yourself of this pain and suffering and find someone who truly has real love and respect for you. Besides, when love truly flourishes between two people, they tend to start calling one another by loving pet names instead of their actual names anyway. Update. Hello everyone, it has been a few days since my last post, and here are a few updates on what has happened since then. I broke up with my now ex-boyfriend. He obviously knew it was coming and did not seem all that sad about it, so I'm speculating that the suspicion of cheating might have been true. Though, about 3 hours after I broke up with him, which I did in person at a small coffee shop nearby my apartment, in a way that I tried to be no aggressive and kind about, he began calling me non-stop, telling me I'm a lying female dog who only wanted his money, and overall, just calling me all sorts of rude things and sexist comments. I took screenshots of it just in case the harassment continues, but otherwise have taken no actions towards him or responded to him at all. I've since blocked him and the friend he was getting a little too personal with, so I didn't feel the need to keep an eye on them or anything because what they do is really no matter to me now. A few of my other friends have been getting mad at me because how I ended things with them, saying that I should not have been so petty about my name or accuse him of cheating. I'm not sure how they could have heard about any of that unless he was spreading rumors about me, but I'm not trying to jump to any conclusions. Otherwise, I gave him anything he had at my apartment, as he has done for my things. Luckily, we did not live together, so I did not have to worry about moving apartments or anything. The only thing I'm wondering now, would I be a jerk if I sent the screenshots to other people, like the friends who are siding with him or some other people in his circle? I don't think I'm going to, but just thinking. Now, here are some more relevant comments. User 1 said, "Not the a-hole. He was a dick over something that shouldn't have mattered at all to him, but clearly mattered to you. It's that simple. I would end it with the friends that are mad at you about it too. They're not worth keeping around if they can't respect you enough to understand that your current name is your name, and it's that way by choice. And they should have the decency to know you deserve to be called by it and not your former name. Send them the screenshots if you like. It wouldn't make you a bad person or anything. I'd just consider if they're worth the effort first." And finally, user 2 commented and said, "Sending those screenshots is like telling someone who is in love that their partner is cheating. It can go either way. They may appreciate it and still stick to the other person, in which case you are still the odd duck. They may appreciate it, leave the other person, and forever be resentful of you for ruining that ship. They may not appreciate it and flip out on you completely. It could also make no difference at all. They may come to your side after seeing it all. None of the above seems worth it. I would just move on. 5 options means about 20% chance of each, with only option 5 favoring OP. If 4 people in a 20 friend group don't automatically side with you after years of knowing you, all 20 of them don't deserve to be in your life." So, first off, that last comment we just read that got into Steiner math territory, I don't see a problem with OP sending the screenshots. Again, with the larger group of friends, we've gotten limited information, and it's not really been good so far, but again, for me, not enough to paint a full picture, so I ain't gonna say anything like that like the people in the comments are, which is fine. But I definitely feel like the boyfriend was cheating, looking for a way out, heard the name thing, and a light bulb went off over his head, a dimly lit one, and said, "Eureka, I've got it, I've found a way out!" And then him and the friends started making out behind OP's back and went, betrayal's so hot, But anyway, guys, we're at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't betray your friends. Have a good day, and bye-bye!